Welcome to the Gifts for Glory podcast, where we celebrate and promote men and women using their gifts for God's glory. Know someone who is making an impact for God's kingdom using their gifts, talents, and passions? We'd love to meet them. Send us an email at podcast@giftsforglory.com. That's podcast@gifts4glory.com. And now here is our host, Dave Ebert.
Hello, friends and neighbors. Welcome to the second edition of the Gifts for Glory podcast for 2021. We're continuing our Hope Through Laughter series, and with the year that we all had in 2020 and seeing the tumult that seems to continue on into this new year, we need to laugh as much as possible. And we wanted to share just a sample of the amazing men and women who use comedy to make a positive impact on the world. January, we started with my conversation with the great Bob Smiley. Be sure to check that episode out if you haven't already. And this week, we're joined by Robin O'Brien. But before we get to that conversation, let's jump on into our devotions with Dave. It can't be overstated. There is a lot of turmoil in the world, even in the church. There's division and strife. There is anger and hatred. Sadly, within the church. Some of it is based on pride. Some of it is based on fear. But let's be honest, both of which have no place in the body of Christ. For those of us who are watching, we know the real enemy is not the Democrats, it's not the Republicans, it's not Biden and Harris, it's not Trump and Pence, it's not even the mainstream media or social media. The real enemy we're facing, the real enemy we're seeing on full display, and the real enemy that will only be more and more present in the days to come, it's not human. The enemy is not of this world, but we know this enemy has already lost. We just have to hold tight to Jesus. As we get closer and closer to His return, it might feel scary, or even moments might even feel hopeless. You might even be tempted to get angry, spew words of division, or even feel hate towards those who might come and cause you or your family trouble or harm or upset you. But I want to encourage you that we need to take heart. Take heart, as none of this is a surprise to God. Jesus even warned us, as well as gave us hope. For this week, we want to look at John 16:33. I have told you all this so that you may have peace in me. Here on earth, you will have many trials and sorrows. But take heart, because I have overcome the world. Again, John 16:33, that's the NLT translation. Jesus has overcome. He overcame death. He overcame sin. He overcame our true enemy. And when we align with Him, we align with His victory. Take that to heart. As we face trials and sorrows in this world, we will. Jesus was not ambiguous. He wasn't leaving things up to chance. He said, you will have many trials and sorrows. He didn't say may or might or could. He said you will. But as we face those trials and sorrows, we also share in the victory that Jesus accomplished by dying on the cross and then being resurrected. And let's be honest, we will see persecution. And personally, I feel we will experience persecution even in America at levels only our brethren in China, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and other nations who see Christianity as a threat to their power will see the same kind of persecution that they are eventually. We haven't seen it yet. There have been blips here and there of like a sampling of persecution, but I don't think that just because we're Americans, we're inoculated from true persecution like our brethren have seen in foreign lands. Now, I want to encourage you to pray to be ready, but don't search for it. Don't want it. Don't create it. Don't antagonize in order to be persecuted. Don't bring it on yourself, because that does nothing to honor and glorify God. So don't create it, don't search for it, and don't even want it. I'm talking about it, but I don't want it. But I know it's a very real thing that could be coming. And just think that if you are chosen in God's plan to experience persecution, count it as joy. And the Word tells us to count it as joy. And always remember the words of Jesus. Take heart, because I have overcome the world. Be encouraged. Take heart. Know that Jesus knew even 2,000 years ago, as His words were being recorded, that we would go through trials and sorrows. But know that Jesus has overcome, and if you cling to Him, and if you claim Him as your Lord and Savior, you will overcome as well. So again, John 16:33, I have told you all this so you may have peace in me. Here on earth you will have many trials and sorrows, but take heart because I have overcome the world. And that is our Devotions with Dave segment. So let's get to our conversation with the incredibly funny, the incredibly fun, incredibly creative Robin OBrien. Check our show notes for her links, where you can look for Robin as half of the OBrien Sisters comedy show, and also for relationship advice on the Mark and Robin show. We'll get into these two shows and much more with this week's guest, Robin OBrien, on the Gifts of Glory podcast, where we celebrate and promote men and women that use their gifts for God's glory. And we are back on the Gifts of Glory podcast. I am, of course, Dave OBrien, and I'm joined remotely by somebody that I've had the pleasure of meeting once at the Christian Improv Comedy Conference, and that was in Milwaukee almost 2 years ago now because of COVID, and we were supposed to probably be back in Dallas this past year, but that didn't happen. Robin OBrien of the OBrien Sisters. So excited to have you on. Welcome to the Gifts of Glory podcast.
Oh, so glad to be here. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm a big fan. I enjoy watching you guys improv.
Thank you so much. We love it, and comedy is such an important gift that God has given us, and especially after 2020, such a hard year with the election, the virus, everything else. That's what we're doing this in January. Is we are just promoting really funny people, amazing talent, and trying to bring that hope that comes with laughter. So you were one of the people I thought of. I was like, Robin is incredibly funny. I love doing some improv with her at the conference in 2019. Right. And you do some amazing things with your sister as part of the OBrien Sisters. So tell us a little bit about you and your sister and what the OBrien Sisters, their mission, what they do, or what you guys do.
Oh, okay, sure. Well, the OBrien Sisters comedy podcast actually started out as a radio show. We were here on the radio in Atlanta on a really primetime radio slot of 6 o'clock in the morning on Saturdays. And anyways, but it was a podcast also, and it's available on iTunes, the OBrien Sisters comedy show. And well, we're actually sisters. Jennifer is my sister, and she lives not about 15 minutes away. And so we, about 2 years ago, or this was in 2017, we decided we would do a radio show podcast. And that's how it got started. Obviously, since we're sisters, we've been playing around since we were kids. We would put on shows. I would probably actually say my sister's a bit more hardcore in her comedy devotion. Like she would practice characters when she was 8 years old. I'd go into her bedroom and she would be doing someone from Saturday Night Live, like sitting at her desk. And so we did have lots of videos of ourselves growing up doing comedy. But, there's a real need for laughter in our world. And it's really hard to find comedy that's clean. Because I don't know if people know this. People go blue. Going blue is when you go dirty. And it's so easy to go dirty. Like you go see this filthy comic and everyone's laughing, but you're only laughing because it's kind of awkward and uncomfortable what they're really talking about. But true comedy is comedy that's clean, because that is like you're really using your brain. It's easy to be dirty, anybody can. It's like people who go crazy and, get inappropriate with things. It's like, well, anybody can get inappropriate. I mean, what's so stellar about that? So I think there's just a real need for all ages and families and things that people can watch together and enjoy. So the OBrien Sisters comedy show does do that. Although I'd have to say some of our comedy probably is more aimed towards like the middle school boy age demographic, because there's a lot of jokes about poop and dying. And so we kind of laughed recently, my sister Jennifer OBrien and I, that almost every episode or every sketch has death in it. So we just have this weird, morbid comedy style. It's not really that common as the kind of dark, morbid Christian humor, but it's there because look in the Bible. There's death in the Bible. I mean, I think one of my favorite scriptures in the Bible actually is when Elijah gets called out by the youths and they're like, go on up the mountain, you bald head. And then the next scene is 42 bears mauled the youths. And it's like, that's like funny to me. I mean, I know death isn't funny, but we got to have a sense of humor about how life is. And, people ask, how did we get to that point? My sister and I grew up in a divorced home. And so we moved around a lot. We lived in about 23 different houses.
Wow.
I went to 11 different schools. We moved like every year in January. So convenient.
Yeah.
And so all the time we had to go make new friends like every year. And so I think kind of that just made us have a different approach to life and just kind of laugh more about it, because you can't take life too seriously. You got to laugh. So
Absolutely. So comedy pretty much came naturally, almost as maybe a coping mechanism with all the different moves and the different things that you guys are going through.
You're making me laugh, but yes, that's very true. I would probably say if you watch any comedian, they're some are well adjusted, some aren't, but really we all got into comedy because there's been some trauma.
So other than the podcast, you also do Rubber Ducky Improv.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's here in Atlanta, Rubber Ducky Improv, right? I didn't mean to interrupt you. I felt like you were in mid-sentence.
Oh, that's okay. So tell us about Rubber Ducky Improv. How did you get into improv?
Sure. Wow, I've never been asked that question before.
Uh-oh.
That's interesting. I don't know. Growing up, when I was in 8th grade, my dream was to be on Saturday Night Live. When I was about 16 years old, I started doing radio, and I really enjoyed radio. Radio is a great thing. I mean, you can just, it basically you're improving for 3 hours, playing records in between. And if it's college radio, you can talk endlessly for hours about how much you know about everything. I'm so superior with my musical taste and knowledge. And so I moved into that, and then I got a degree in television. And I've always been attracted to comedy. It just makes me laugh. And improv is something where you don't have to prepare for as much. But in some ways you do. You have to learn the structure of the games, and you have to trust who you're with. So those are like somehow that's how I got into improv. Just, I heard about it and I really liked, of course, whose line is it anyways? So there was a guy at my church, and he was walking by one day, and I was like, I heard that you were one of the people who helped start Whole World Theater in Atlanta. And he says, yes, I am. I said, well, would you like to start up an improv group here at church? And so we did. So that's how the Rubber Ducky improv group got started. And we've done shows and helped raise money for benefits and sex trafficking, and we've raised money for, when there's been certain problems in the world with weather, Puerto Rico, and, that's kind of how we got into it. But we just got a great team, and everyone loves each other and trusts each other. And it's been a little harder, obviously, this year to do any shows. But,
right.
You guys have done great. What's the name of your improv group again?
Well-Versed Comedy. We did some Zoom improv, and it's like when you're craving Mexican, but all you can afford is Taco Bell.
Yeah.
That's what I compare it to. It's doing online.
But sometimes we got extra sauce in there, and it's a really good show.
Yeah, exactly. So that's awesome. So Rubber Ducky it's a faith-based, it's based out of your church. That is awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We've gone to other churches too. So, we get around, but it's always clean. I mean, that's what makes it different. Again, you can go blue. That's very easy to be dirty. In fact, I would say even one time when my sister was starting up and doing stand-up comedy 25 years ago, we went to a comedy performance at a small little club. And when we were there, all of us from church were in the audience watching. And all of a sudden, the comedians started getting dirtier and like disgustingly filthy. It was horrible. And then I went to the bathroom, and I overheard the lead comedian say, telling the other people, the comedians, there's church people here. Let's go all in. So like that was their intent. Like it was so bad that people like from our church were leaving, because I can't even tell you how disgusting it was what they were implying and saying on stage. And it just goes to show you, it's like there's a real darkness to it. So, we always hope to bring the light, and that's kind of where our mission is to make people laugh. And sometimes it's hard because there's certain faiths where they're like, oh, laughter is bad. We must be serious for the Lord. But God invented laughter. Why would he not want us to use it? So that's how I feel about it, Yeah,
and
I point to the joke on it.
I point to the science. There's so many health benefits to laughter and the release and the emotional decompression that happens, that it's like, it's got to be the design of God to allow us to have that. And unfortunately, so many people will take the gift of God and will corrupt it and misuse it. And that's where you get the dirty humor, where it may be funny, but most people are just laughing out of the shock instead of out of the joy and the creativity of it.
Yeah, I think you just nailed it right there. People are laughing out of the shock.
Yeah.
And then it becomes, if your level of shock is at like a level 85, you have to go to 95 next time to laugh. I mean, you got to think about it. Like it's like that with anything like that's sinful, it becomes more and more in order to get to that point. Yeah. So, which is, some things are a slippery slope.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, you do faith-based improv through Rubber Ducky. You do clean comedy as just a general role because of your faith. So let's talk a little bit about your faith and how you found it, because I know you said you lived in a divorced home and there are a lot of challenges there. At what point did you find the Lord, and how did that happen?
I would say probably I would attribute a lot of my finding the Lord, it comes from my mother. Okay. My mom prayed for me and my sister so much growing up. And I know that we really pushed her buttons for quite some time, especially starting when we were about 13, 14 years old. For Jenny, 15 for me. We really started going down a bad path. We started messing with alcohol and drugs and relationships and just getting involved. And it was so bad. Like, when it first started, my mother actually was kind of smart about things. She put us in rehab. Go see how they are. Like, go test them. And so we got to the rehab place and we're sitting there and they're like, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "Oh, well, we're just getting a urine test and we're leaving. We're going back down south to where we live about 2 hours away." Oh, well, that's what they told us when we got here. It ended up that I got out, but my sister stayed. But I say that is that, like, there at the beginning, right there and there, my mom was trying to put a clamp on it. And as things progressed, for me, although I'd gone to Catholic school growing up, which I will admit, having that church foundation when I was young, we went to church every Sunday. I went to some private schools growing up. That foundation was really important for children. And I think we always need to keep that in mind, is don't underestimate your value of bringing and introduce Christianity in your home early and talking about it and making it a subject of conversation. And also putting the fear of God in you if you're Catholic. Yeah. I'm saying. My grandma told me about purgatory and hell when I was 9 years old. And that really changed me. I'm not kidding. I knew that I never wanted to go there.
Right.
Even as last week, I was listening to an audio book about heaven and near-death experiences, and there's a couple in there that talk about hell, and you're like, "Ooh, Grandma was right." It's a little scary. Yeah, I'm glad I know on this side. But for me, it's an interesting thing. I kept kind of messing up in life in my high school, college years. Kind of kept it on straight. I'd still go to church hungover. I mean, that's just how I was. So I had faith still, kind of. I'd have the Bible in the back seat while I'm driving around drunk. I mean, what was they thinking? It's just kind of silly like that. But that was really God. God was still protecting me then. And then Jennifer, my sister, she studied the Bible at a church. And when I came to see her, she came up to see me at my father's wedding. She was different. I tried to fight with my sister and she wouldn't take the bait. All of a sudden I was like, so she says she's following God now. What's changed? And I could really see that she was different this time. So I started going to church with my sister, and I'd go every other time my sister would ask me to go to church. And she was part of an arts and entertainment ministry.
Okay.
And so part of that is how I got involved with a bunch of artists who also love Jesus, and at the Atlanta Church of Christ. And that's kind of how we got started. And I had to move up to Richmond, Virginia to work on a television show, because I worked in the TV business at this point. That was my degree, was film and television. And I went there and I realized it just was like all the lights started coming on. It's like, no matter where I go, no matter who I talk to, it doesn't matter if I'm in Richmond, Virginia or Atlanta, Georgia in a bar, I'm having the same conversations. There is nothing new under the sun. Mm-hmm. And it was at that point I decided that I'm going to have to turn myself in, because God wins. I can't keep trying to fill this hole in my heart with men and alcohol and drugs and cigarettes and everything, and think that it's not changing. And so I started studying the Bible this time for real. And I got baptized February 28th, 1999. And in a horse trough in Richmond, Virginia. And they sang It Is Well With My Soul. After I got baptized. I was cold though. They did let me go change, so that was good. Yeah. But that's kind of how I came to faith, and I've been part of that ever since. Amen.
And that's awesome. It shows that God is relentless in his pursuit.
Yes.
Even when we mess up or we walk away or we try to keep him at an arm's distance, he's he's still trying to find a way to encroach and get in there, because as you said, you drive around, you still have the Bible with you, even though it's maybe not being used right. But God stayed with you and protected you. And so in 99, I'm not trying to date you or age you, but you're already working, so you're already out of college. Is that right?
Yeah. So I was at that point, I was working in the film business. I was about 20. Well, I was born in 73, for all you hackers out there trying to figure it out. My password. No, I'm not telling you my first cat's name. Thank you very much. Yeah, I was about 26 years old at the time.
Nice. So after you accept the Lord and you start pursuing, does everything just like become easy, or how does, what happens next in your life?
Well, I decided, here's the funny part. I never wanted to get married or have children. So I was pretty much an anarchist in some ways. It's interesting. I'm a capitalist. I was an objectivist, but I also was kind of like, I'm cool. Since I was a college radio DJ, I know so much about music and culture and art. So I don't need no family. But as after I became a Christian and I started looking around at some of the people around me, I was like, wow, marriage really works for some people. Didn't work for my mom and dad, but works for them. And I see that people raising their kids. I'm like, you know what? Maybe I can do this. So I actually decided, maybe I will. And I met a man at my church, and we started dating, and it went very, very fast. 3 months after, we went steady, 3 months after our first date. And within 3 months later after that, he asked me to marry him. And we were married probably 10 months after I'd met him for the first time. So wow, that was an interesting thing. So we had met at church. However, pretty much right after I got married, I realized something wasn't right, but I had a lot of faith. God is going to figure this out. I fully believe that God's going to work this out. And I just kept kind of pushing things off to the side, and I got pregnant right away. I was like, so the baby started coming, and I'm married, and I just keep thinking God's going to work out our relationship issues. And it just never did work out. And so we actually lasted about 7 years, and we got divorced. So I am a divorced person. But, it's very sad. I'd have to say that's kind of what led me to, I do a podcast now with my boyfriend. His name's Mark. It's called The Mark and Robin Show. And we talk a lot about relationships and how to save them. So that's kind of both of our missions, because we both come from divorces. And so we interview a lot of relationship therapists and counselors and faith-based people and just people who aren't of faith, just who have maybe comedic interests. As a matter of fact, we had on our show, and I'm so excited about, the woman, her name is Patricia Madsen. She wrote Improv Wisdom.
Okay.
And it says, don't prepare, just show up. And she's out there in California at Stanford. And she's been teaching improv for 30 years, maybe longer. And she is amazing. You got her book's been translated in different languages. And her approach to life has been I think we put a lot of stock into being over prepared. And she's like, you need to be more relaxed. And this is what improv is enjoy the moment. Trust the people you're with. Just say yes. And just to keep going, and that's kind of how that happened. So the Mark and Robin podcast, pretty much that's been trying to, in a way, is that the bow on the package of my divorce? I don't know. But I would say that both of us are involved in divorce groups. There's a really great thing called Divorce Care. It's a faith-based initiative for parents and for children. They have a divorce care for kids component. So I do really recommend that program for anyone, even if you're not divorced. Let's say you're separated or you're thinking about divorce. I highly recommend Divorce Care, because it's such a godly approach to viewing the model of how God sees it. And I felt it was very comforting. And the message they really pound in for the children is that it's not your fault. And kids need to hear that. You know, they think they played some part in it. And they did. No, I'm just kidding. That was a joke.
No.
I'm just kidding. It's being funny there.
It's easy for them to blame themselves, think that it's their fault, and also to be confused because their world is shattered. So they need that consistency, that love, and to know that it's not your fault.
Mm-hmm.
And adults will make mistakes. You have to trust that God loves you and is going to carry you through.
Right. Yeah. And that's the message they pour in, is that it's not your fault. And they really love up on the kids, you know, trying to make them feel special and get in touch with their feelings about this, because it's very hard. You know, I've listened a lot. I don't know if people are, or if you're that familiar, but Dr. James Dobson has a podcast, Family Talk. And I really like it. And in fact, it shaped a lot of how I viewed parenting my children when they were young and today. And he just talks about, like, don't be deceived. Divorce is very hard on your children. As much as society wants to say that divorce, you know, everyone should be happy, you know, unless there's abuse, you know, be very, very, you know, careful with that. And so, you know, I would, my only message I could say is, if you're considering divorce, is to find a faith-based person. If you are of a faith, is to find a faith-based counselor to help you think about things, because sometimes there's a shift, you know. There's all different types of groups out there that can help you. And that's kind of where the Mark and Robin show came from, is that we really want to help people step back. Like, is there something else we can do to help fix this marriage, or to find a way for you guys to trust each other again and to communicate on that level? You know, people say, oh, we don't communicate enough. They probably are communicating enough, but there's not a trust there that if one person's saying something, that the other person's hearing it right. So sometimes you just got to fix that broken connection. Yeah. And that can be helpful. And a lot of it comes down to trust. Trust. And so if there's been some mistrust, some things have messed up in the past. We've actually had several people on the podcast who had infidelity in their relationships, and they were able to recover from it and actually have a marriage ministry, a faith-based marriage ministry, about how to help people recover after infidelity.
That's awesome. And it goes to show that God can resurrect anything if we actually let him do it.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. With God, everything's possible, you know. And another thing I just wanted to throw in there, just because I feel like the Holy Spirit said it, is that, you know, I feel like we need to learn to surrender things to God.
Yeah.
You know, I started doing 12-step about 6 years ago. And one thing that I learned is that I have a problem personally. I'll just be honest with you, is fear. Fear is something that I've had people pray over me about several times, many times, that it's just, for me, I find fear to be something, it makes me feel like I'm in control if I have fear. And, but it's not helpful, and it's not helpful for my family. And it's something I've kind of passed on to my kids, and I'm working on it. But one of the ways I have worked on it is to be surrendered. Yeah. So sometimes if I can, like, almost, for me, it helps me to look to the east, and I'll be like, I surrender this, Lord, to you. Problem that I'm having right now with my children, or my latest COVID test that I get like every 3 weeks, it seems. But, you know, whatever it is, if I can, like, seriously say to God, just stop and go, I surrender. And one day I didn't even realize it. I was worried about COVID and a friend of mine's family, because they have at-risk people in their family, and I'd interacted with them. And I didn't realize I was going to fear. Not just like twice a day. I was going 40 times an hour.
Wow.
So when I started saying, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I mean, I just kept saying that over and over. God, I surrender this to you. And it took a while, but I got there, probably after like 2 or 3 hours. But it made me realize sometimes fear can be a soundtrack that you're playing in the back of your mind and you don't even know it.
We'll get back to this fun conversation with Robin OBrien, one half of the OBrien Sisters comedy show, in just a moment. But I wanted to give you a sample of what they do. Here is a skit from their holiday 2020 special. Let's meet Roxy and Rose with some of their quote-unquote advice.
Roxy and Rose Advice Corner, giving you advice whether you need it or not. But trust us, you need it.
Oh, hi. Happy holidays.
Hey, Merry Christmas
so
to
good
you.
To see
Happy Hanukkah, everything.
Okay. Well,
we got a letter today.
Okay, let's get in.
Dear Roxy and Rose. So sweet.
Oh, amazing.
I don't know if I should go home for Christmas and see the relatives, just with the news and all. What do you think?
Well, the COVID is on the loose.
Very true.
Listen, you could go at it two ways.
Okay.
One, it's a great excuse to get out of stuff.
I have gotten out of a lot of things this year, thanks to COVID.
Amazing.
Sorry,
it's a great
I felt a little clamped.
Oh, I can tell you, it gets me out of everything right now. It's the best. It's the best excuse of 2020.
Yeah, and then if you really don't want to hang out with people for some period of time, you just say that I'm in a quarantine period.
Oh,
that
all
covers
the time.
a lot of sins.
All the time. So you use that,
okay.
or how do you really like these relatives?
That's a good
Do you want to
question.
see them next year?
How good are the gifts that they give to you?
Because honestly, you can play COVID into your favor.
Okay.
Why don't you bring somebody you know is positive?
There
you keep your mask on and you distance, but don't.
You ask them, they say, don't wear a mask, and you sit them at the table next to the relatives.
Right next.
That you don't like.
And see what happens.
Yeah.
Let fate take its, take its course.
Yeah.
See what happens.
Put them next to Uncle Thrifty Tom.
Oh, he's so cheap. I can't stand it.
I know. And
he
Frugal
smells
Fanny.
like a mothball. You just
does.
smell him walking, and it's terrible.
Yeah, it's like everything's
disgusting. I'm disgusted with him.
So if you put but don't sit next to Uncle Danny because he really does give good gifts.
He's got money.
I don't know. You think this Botox pays for itself?
No, it doesn't.
It
It's just a pretty penny. And
all right, so we got one more in the bag. Go ahead and read it.
Okay, listen. What do you get somebody who you don't know what to get anything for? Okay, great question. Listen, I got a good
Chocolate
answer.
covered cherries or
a kitty cat. Listen. I got a box of kitty cats, okay? So I think you should give them a kitty cat, okay?
that is the perfect gift.
Yeah.
You got poles in that box?
I do, but listen.
One year we did it.
I know. Well, you live and learn. And so anyway, yeah, I got several kitty cats. I think you should give all 7 of them.
That's right.
Now, they have not had the shots or nothing.
No,
but
one of them has a couple of glazed eyes over and a little bit
there's
of
infections
iPhone.
on 3 of them. But don't worry about it. It's
That's all right.
fine.
We give you the cream.
Yeah. Just rub the eyeballs with the cream.
Free.
It's fine.
It's free.
I got 7 free kitty cats. You're welcome. Okay, well, this has been Roxy and Rose Advice Corner,
Good.
giving you advice whether you need it or not. But trust us, you need it.
It took a while, but I got there, probably after like 2 or 3 hours. But it made me realize sometimes fear can be a soundtrack that you're playing in the back of your mind and you don't even know it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how it just takes a little bit and then it can grow and just take over. Is it a specific fear or is it just fear in general that you tend to wrestle with?
I tend to wrestle with fear of health, actually.
Okay.
Health, I would say. Health for me, I'm a single mom with 4 kids. And so something happens to me, knock on wood, I'm not superstitious, I'm little stitious. That's a little joke. I stole it, don't worry. I'm not going to try to claim it. But probably health is probably like my one big thing. And I'm always worried that I want my kids to get to heaven. And it's funny, now I realize this is why my mom prayed for me so much when my sister and I were kids. And we were totally messing up as teenagers. She kept praying for us and praying for us. And my mom actually went to meet the Lord in 2002.
Wow.
I'll just share a quick little bit about that. Is she got lung cancer, very fast, aggressive. Interestingly enough, about 9 months before my mother got it, she was smoking, and I looked at her and I said, "Mom, you got to. One day that's not going to be. You should really quit." And something like made me stop cold for a second. I was like, "Oh," and then like 9 months later, she got it, and she was so faithful in her sickness. My mother, she would be crying, racked with pain, sitting on the edge of the bed, bald from the chemo and scarred from the scratching of the radiation on her windpipe, her trachea. And she'd say, "I love him. I love God so much." And I was like, wow, Mom. I mean, she was just so impressive like that. And about 89 days after she got her first symptom, she was in Northside Hospital here in Atlanta. And the nurse looked at me as I had brought her in that day, and she goes, your mom's not going to make it today. So you better say anything you need to say to her. About 3 hours later, there's a code blue that was called in the room. And then the code blue people, they came out, and the nurses came out, and they said, she sat up in her bed. She said, Jesus is here. Tell my girls I love him. I'm going with him. And she laid back down and started to die again. And the nurses were crying, and they said, we see angels come for people, but it's a rare person that Jesus himself shows up. So that's a special lady. I don't know who she is, but she's special. So that was really heartwarming for me to hear that my mom got to see Jesus like that. So later they're like, we're going to keep just resuscitating your mom. I'm like, oh no, she's Jesus already showed up. Let her go. She is happy. She finally got what she wanted. She gets to go be with him. And so we said our goodbyes, and she died a couple hours later. And she just kept saying, as she was dying there in the ICU, she was like, I saw heaven, and it's so beautiful. She's like, heaven is just beautiful. Like, she was just beaming. She just said it was so amazing. And so that was just encouraging to my faith that, that's where I want to go. I want to go to heaven. I want my kids to go to heaven. I want everybody to go to heaven, And that should be our goal in life, is getting people to heaven, and whatever that takes, I mean, for some people, God is going to give everybody free will. So you're going to screw up. He's going to let you screw up, because a lot of times you got to hit rock bottom in order to say, I give up.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's beautiful. And that's a legacy that your mom has left you and your kids, and what a blessing to be able to leave such a legacy. So that's awesome. That's amazing.
Yeah. She was a great lady. Her name is Shirley Griffin.
Shirley Griffin.
One more informational piece for the hackers. I'm not telling you her birth date, though, okay? Don't even try. But yeah.
So we've got you've got the Mark and Robin podcast, where you're trying to minister to people and help them rebuild and just surrender relationships. And then we talked a little bit about you have, I guess, the more fun is the OBrien sisters. Tell us about your show and a little bit more about where we can find it.
Oh, sure. So the OBrien Sisters Comedy Show podcast is on iTunes. It's on Libsyn. It's on Stitcher. It's pretty much anywhere. You just Google the OBrien Sisters and you'll find it. But it's a podcast that actually is an improv sketch comedy show. So what we do is we have improv sketches. We have a set of characters that we recycle a lot. So one of our sets of characters is the Roadkill Rangels, who we drive around looking for roadkill to bury in people's front yards. And, there's plenty of death jokes involved where we're like knocking on the door and we're telling, hey, little girl, is this your puppy? We just found dead in the road. It's totally morbid and fun, but we have fun with it. But that's our joke, that we're digging holes in people's front yards. I mean, it's kind of silly. Let's see. Another one is Pam and Leslie. They're the VBS ladies. And so they always have their problem child, Jeremiah, who's always acting up and hanging from the curtains or whatever, just bouncing off the walls. And so there's lots of, jokes there. Another set of characters that actually me and my sister really adore is the Silver Stars. And the Silver Stars are two women who were in our 80s. And one day, a long time ago, we were somebody. We would be in New York City on Broadway, and people would just love us, And so we go on and on about how we just miss the good old days, and how, now we live in Florida, and, we're, getting tan every day. And so there's lots of jokes there. Another set of characters we do is the Butts County PSA players. And so every episode almost will have the Butts County Puppet Players and the Butts County Puppet Players show. Well, we say for Christmas time, make sure you don't eat any raw turkey because you might die. There's death in every episode. And another character that my sister and I have actually done on stage a lot is Roxy and Rose. And Roxy and Rose are from New Jersey in New York City. And so we actually have ties to the mafia. So if you need to kill somebody, we know a guy. And the Roxy and Rose, they have advice. So we tell you how to take care of, you have a boyfriend you need to get rid of? Roxy and Rose can help you out. But they just give relationship advice. It's the holidays. Do you want to dump them? Do you want to get more gifts? Do you want to get less gifts? There's a whole way you need to handle that. And so Roxy and Rose are just our two, northern characters, and people really like that. We actually took Roxy and Rose and developed them into women who don't hate Trump. So before the last election, which was in 2016, we totally did not think Trump was going to win. So we were like, we're going to do these characters, women who don't hate Trump. So do we love him? No. Do we hate him? No, we don't hate him. So we're women who don't hate Trump. So it just really was pretty funny. Like, we dressed up like our New York characters and put on lots of makeup, and it was a big hit. But like I said, when Trump actually became president, we kind of stopped it. We were like, oh, we didn't really expect that. So, we probably could make some money going back to it, but there's just so much, animosity towards President Trump that we just let it go. So yeah, it was too much, I want to be the body of Christ and not be divisive. Although if you check out my Twitter feed, I am. About that. But I try to keep it, I really, you want to draw people to the Lord. It's not about politics. So
right.
Kind of where we went with that.
Exactly.
So, yeah, the O'Brien Sisters comedy show. We're actually going to be doing we do specials for the holidays and all sorts of things. So there's a lot in there. And then we do fake commercials,
Yeah.
At Thanksgiving, we had one about how to have a 1900s Thanksgiving. Have yourself a live turkey. That's right. We deliver to your home a turkey in a box with holes in it. Let that turkey free in your backyard as the little ones run behind them with a little gun or a bow and arrow. So you can shoot your own live turkey in your backyard. So we just went through the whole gamut of commercials, so I don't know. The O'Brien sisters, we have a lot of fun. And here's what's great about it. Me and my sister, we laugh so much. I don't know. Have you ever heard of Car Talk? Do you remember that show?
No.
Car Talk. Okay, so Car Talk was on NPR, and they had the two brothers. And the two brothers, they're from up north, and they would joke with each other the whole time, but then they would take phone calls, and they would fix people's cars. So there's a lot of banter between the two brothers, click and clack. And my sister and I are very similar in that. So we have in the middle of the show, in between sketches and, our little comedy commercials, we do a banter piece, or we talk a lot about stories of our growing up and our faith and all sorts of things. And people really like that. That's the part they actually, remember a lot too. So there's a lot of banter between the sisters. And for me, it's wonderful because we took a hiatus after the first season, and it's so good to laugh with my sister. And the two of us laughing together, when we're in public, around people or groups of people or on stage, the two of us, the communication we have with each other and the banter, the energy we have, it just really feeds and it spreads in a room. And it's almost like a crowd will gather around us because we're making everyone laugh and feel included in our jokes. So it really works.
Have you been able to do any live shows in 2020 at all?
No.
No.
That would be a no.
No.
To be honest, I don't even go into, I've just recently started going into stores sometimes.
Okay.
So I had my groceries, I would pick them up. My children at this point are still virtual. Just trying to be really careful because I have people on the periphery of our family who are at risk,
Yeah.
Someone has diabetes in my family, and then in Mark's family, he has a family member in rehab in the hospital. So we just have to be careful. So we've been extra careful.
Well, I have two segments that I do at the end of each show.
Okay.
One is called the Interrogation. It's 7 random questions.
Okay.
That otherwise probably wouldn't have fit in the conversation. And then the last thing is wise counsel. I ask for your wise counsel for anybody that wants to use their gifts, their talents, or passions as a way to honor and glorify God.
Okay.
So let that marinate in the back of your mind while we go through the interrogation.
Okay.
First question. What's your favorite sport?
My favorite sport is karate, martial arts. That's the one that I take martial arts. I've been taking that for years, and I really enjoy it. It's really good for the brain. It's good for executive function.
Nice. Do you have a belt? Are you what level?
I'm a red belt with a black stripe. And my next belt test, whenever that is, I'm going for my brown belt. So that's kind of cool.
And that's actually very good in case Mark ever gets out of line.
I can't. Actually, he took Muay Thai from like this expert guy. And he did wrestling in high school. So I've actually tried to like see if I can take him down with an arm bar. I can't. He beats me. So sometimes I'll like run up behind him and jump on him, see if I can't do it. Because it's almost like trying to like catch someone who's really good at jujitsu. I'm not going to win. So.
Well, you got the 4 kids. Maybe you need to form a circle and do like the whole, Chuck Norris thing.
Yeah. Wow, 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 wow. Yeah. Wow, wow, wow. Sorry.
Next question. Favorite movie of all time?
Favorite movie of all time by Robin O'Brien. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my favorite movie of all time is probably Pee-wee's Big Adventure. And the reason I say Pee-wee's Big Adventure is because I love Tina at the Alamo. And it's like, hi, kids. Welcome to the Alamo. There are 200 ways to prepare corn, which I will now tell you. Dan Hook was amazing. And so I really enjoy, I'd have to say Pee-wee's Big Adventure is like one of my favorite movies. I enjoy that.
I was shocked. I was expecting something like deep.
There probably is something deep, but my brain for some reason is just not going today. What's your favorite movie?
My favorite movie of all time, I think, is probably Rudy.
That's a guy thing.
Yeah, it's a guy thing.
That's a guy. Yeah, it's just, but it's good. You know what? I should let my kids watch that. Everyone needs a redemption story. There's not enough of those these days.
No, there's not. All right. Question number 3. What's your favorite scripture?
Proverbs 3, verses 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. So
that's a good one.
I think if you're a smarty pants like me sometimes, you can really depend on your own wisdom. But in the end, it's God who's going to choose your path.
Yeah.
I mean, he gives us free will, but it's still, you have to, again, surrender.
You got to surrender. And he gives you the free will, but he's always right there ready to just like bump you back on the right path. And he's very good at subtlety sometimes. Yes, I was actually talking to someone yesterday. That can be the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit can be very subtle, very powerful, but also, you just pay attention. Yeah. Sometimes we don't. Question number 4. Okay. You've lived in Richmond and Atlanta. What's been your favorite place to live? My favorite place to live so far would have to be actually Atlanta, Georgia. I really like the weather here. I'm from Florida originally. Okay. And we have seasons. So we have the spring in Atlanta is gorgeous. And our fall is very nice too. So, what I don't like is being cold because I'm from Florida. And I just can't stand it when it's really cold out. It's an ongoing joke how I have gloves and hats and everything else. But I'd have to say Atlanta, Georgia has probably been my favorite place to live so far. But I can't, here's what I can't stand. In Atlanta, Georgia, in the month of January, in the beginning of February, we do not have a lot of sunshine. So I have decided for me as a 47-year-old woman going forward, I will now go to Florida and get some sunshine, probably the 3rd week of January going forward, because it's really good for my mental health because it's like, we have it's almost like 6 weeks of gray. It's kind of bad here. Yeah. God bless you people who live out in Portland and out there in England where it's always raining. I hats off to you. Stay there because I ain't going. Question number 5. What is your biggest comedic influence? Believe it or not, Paula Poundstone. Really? Paula Poundstone from the 80s. She had a very dry sense of humor, and she did really great crowd work. And there was just something where she would throw it out there to the crowd, and people, you could just see the lights going off. And there's just something about the way she talks. She's like, well, one day I was driving down the road and I saw a camouflage car, and I just went ahead and hit it to prove a point. So she's probably a little bit like the female version of Mitch Hedberg, but there's just something about Paula Poundstone that's really made me laugh. I know in recent years she's done some of the NPR. I think she's on a TV radio show that they have, and she's done other things. But I really like a lot of her stuff. She was a big influence for me wanting to get into comedy in the 90s. So. Yeah, and that's a name you don't hear a lot, but like you said, she's very good. She's very talented, and she's one of those that is probably very underrated as far as legendary comics. Yes.
I've watched and I've absorbed. Ellen DeGeneres did a lot of comedy work in the beginning, and her comedy work was great too. Like she did a great bit about ants. She went, "Dear God, why did you invent ants?" And God said to her, "Well, there's the whole pest control companies, and I keep them in line." And she goes in this whole bit and walks you down a path. So, I think Ellen probably is a little bit underrated, but I really do like Paula Poundstone. I'd say modern wise, I love, is it Sebastian Mancuso? Am I saying his name right? He's a really funny guy that I really, enjoy. Just his bits are so, I think I really like comedy where they can paint a picture and you're there. You're so there. And they walk you and they're using their hands and their body language. I mean, I love it. Who's your favorite comedian?
My favorite, I liked, as far as like a comedic actor, John Candy.
Oh, yes.
The manic improv of somebody like Chris Farley.
Oh, yes.
Those are two big ones. And I really like a guy like Michael Jr.
Yes.
Because everything is just like, it's tied to his faith. It's like he's able to go out there. He's not preaching at you, but where he stands, and he's able to make it funny without being like too church-ease, too Christian.
Right. That's a great point. Yeah, I think Shonda Pierce.
Yes,
she does the same thing. She has that quality in her.
Question number 6: what is the hardest thing about being clean?
The hardest part about being clean is wow. I think the hardest part of being clean is coming up with new material, probably. If you kind of have to get in that groove of it. I think as far as, being dirty, I think once you kind of don't live in that mindset, it's not so hard to not be dirty. Although between me and my sister, sometimes we kind of start to skate the line. We're like, whoa, back up. Definitely not ready for radio. I'm just being honest here. But as far as being on stage, I don't feel like that's probably one of my biggest struggles is to work on being clean. But as far as being a comedian in general, I would say new material is probably my biggest struggle. And that comes down to you kind of have to make a place for it and make it a part of your life. It's just like you want to be good at anything. You got to put some effort into it. It's just not going to happen to you. Like take my sister, Jennifer O'Brien, for example. She really invests a lot into her comedy. I mean, she will spend hours writing her jokes, writing them down over and over. I mean, she's got an hour and a half set. And she's worked very hard on that. And she does characters and videos. And so, but that's someone who's making it like a job. So, if you want to be successful at comedy, you really have to look at it as a job.
So final question, once everything opens back up and we're back to normal, if you could book a show with you, your sister, and any other comics, who would you want to work together with?
Wow. If I would, anybody?
Anybody.
Oh, well, probably like Sebastian Mancuso or Brian Regan. That'd be great. That would be great. I'd love to do that. And I don't know, I guess here in Atlanta, they've got some places. I know I see a lot of my friends from the Christian Comedy Association perform at Zanies in Nashville. So perhaps there. Dusty Slay is another really funny guy.
Yeah.
And so those are some people who I think are really funny.
All right. So you passed the interrogation.
Woo!
Is
I'm sniffing my armpits. They smell fine. I guess I did okay.
Well, I can't tell, so I'll take your word for it. So final question I always ask is, for somebody that wants to, whether you want to talk about comedy or just in general using their gifts for God's glory, what's your wise counsel for them?
I think it's to pay attention and listen to what people growing up and you have said about you as a compliment. People would say to me, Robin, you're funny. You're funnier than the stuff I see on TV. Like, why are you not famous? But people would say, listen to what people have already told you. I think maybe your gifts have already been exposed. You just have to think about it. Sometimes it's a shift of mindset. You can be more like Eastern in your thinking that perhaps the whole world is actually kind of in favor for you to do well. Maybe if we would just listen and to what people are saying and be very open to that, as opposed to this is my box and this is my religion and only my church is going to heaven and only my people are only going, if you can kind of expand that and think, maybe God is talking to you through other people, maybe even not in people who go to church.
Yeah.
And if you can be open to that and listening, I think sometimes you might be surprised. Sometimes, I mean, personally, even in my life, we've studied the Bible with people, someone you met in a grocery store. And then you just happen to say, hey, you want to go to church? And they'll say, as a matter of fact, I was just praying about and said to God, if you're real, show me yourself today. So I think if you just kind of put it out there to the universe and, let God work through other people, even people you don't think, and just keep your eyes open, because God really, it's, there's the whole scripture. Don't put your talent under a bushel. Don't hide your talent. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Don't put your talent, don't hide your talent. Because, who's looking under a bushel anyways, right? Nobody. That was a joke.
The FBI?
The FBI, are they there? I don't know. And this, not this past year, they haven't been looking. But I'm putting my tinfoil back away. Thank you very much. Okay. But I do think that if the world and God wants you to succeed. And if you just kind of be open to it and say yes to things. I've had some friends of mine who they get offered opportunities, and you might think, oh, well, that's kind of dingy, or, oh, that's small change. I don't need to do that. Or that's giving up too much of my time to volunteer and do that for free. You know what? You might be surprised. You say yes to something and you get there and you meet someone else who actually has exactly where you want to be at. You just never know. So if you don't put yourself out there and be open to situations, that was what happened. Frankly, in all honesty, I go to a church and I was really only dating people at my church. And so it wound up that I went out and met Mark, and he wasn't going to my church, but I was like, well, hey, I'll go out with him. He loves Jesus. And now we're dating. But sometimes you can be really caught up in this box that you only think certain people who are in a certain place are going to get you where you're going, but you just have to be open. So saying yes to things. And when you say yes to things, it creates trust in other people, because they're like, oh, Robin will say yes, or Robin will do it. And not in a okay, I'm not going to go into that whole, we all have our martyr syndrome, right? A lot of us Christians. Yeah. Just put some more bricks in my backpack. I'm going up this hill anyways. Just put some more in there for me. I'll take them up there for you. But I think that just saying yes to things can kind of open up our minds, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Robin O'Brien, we thank you so much for coming on. We have your website linked, robin-obrien.com, and also the links to all your social media so people can check out both of your podcasts, the Mark and Robin podcast and the O'Brien Sisters comedy. It's been so much fun having you on and just talking comedy with somebody that is just an amazing person and amazing inspiration.
Well, you know what? You just keep doing what you're doing, because you're getting it out there and you're making people laugh. And I know for certain, even though it was Taco Bell on the Facebook, you know what? That Taco Bell was a good meal for a lot of people. So you're doing a great work. So I'm proud of you guys with Well-Versed Comedy. So keep it up.
Thank you so much. Robin O'Brien of the O'Brien Sisters. We got all the links in the show notes, so you can check out their podcast, and also check out the Mark and Robin podcast for relationship advice. Even if you're doing well, a little bit of advice can never hurt.
Thanks for having me.